rest and bathe in this presence. It's like being in the water in the ocean if we were fish, but we're not. We're in this manifestation, in this body at this moment, and yet we know we're not the body. So I want the awareness in this moment to be nothing but love. Again, non-judgmental. Love does not judge. So if you're feeling any judgment from whatever reason, whatever the day or events of your past or whatever, let those thoughts and emotions go for just a few moments. And we do that by turning the awareness of who and what we are and observe these thoughts and emotions and activities in our world. And be love. Experience the love that we live and move and have our being. It is very difficult for our hearts and minds to open if we're living in fear or shame or guilt, even for a few moments. Just release any of that and be the love that you are. For the truth is, as you look out and you see the world through eyes of love, you are seeing the world through the eyes of God. Can you get a sense of that? So again, you're not your body. You have a body and you're choosing to let it go for the moment and to be still. You have thoughts and you're letting them drift by. Your emotions are going by and you're aware that you are love. If you've ever loved anyone, any other human being or anything, you have a sense of what that love is, what God has for us, for you. It's many, many times magnified over what we experience ourselves. You are love. In any situation, feel that love that you are. Continue to breathe that into your consciousness and observe the love that you are, the love that exists through you, as you, and in you. What love needs is you. Again, get a sense of that awareness by observing. Peace, be still and know. Peace, be still and know this truth. Now as you breathe that fully and deeply, a little deeper, let's rest in the silence and just be in this ocean of love that we live and move and have being in the silence. In the silence. In the silence. hold this sacred space for just another moment as you get a real sense of being in holy, sacred ground as we rest in this quiet time, and especially when you rest in this presence of love. Feel that sense and that awareness permeate every cell and organ in your body. And as we frequently say, be the love you wish to see in the world. So now take a deep breath in, and you can begin very gently to wiggle your fingers and toes. Roll your shoulders. Rub your hands together. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes to come back to this place. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
So Labor Day is the official end of summer. So,
Oh. Yeah, right.
yeah, I know. Living in Florida, that's a joke, isn't it? Yeah, that's a joke. I think that was for people north of the Mason-Dixon line that created that myth. But anyhow, so a happy Labor Day. And I think most of us have tomorrow off, and there's probably several people who are not here today because of that. So we wish them the best in their celebration of that. It's always good to take an extra time of relaxation, and it's great to do that. So last week we concluded our series on Living Untethered by Michael Singer. We concluded that talk series, but I hope we didn't. I think I said it ad nauseum, that I hope we didn't continue in the work, the practice, as Michael Singer calls it. It's practice. It takes practice. It's the practice of letting go of the objects in our mind, the objects of thought, of emotions, and then what's happening on the outside world. You remember those three things are the objects of consciousness. We are not those objects. We, our true self, are the observer. But by those objects that keep us blocked, and we keep bringing them up, causes turmoil and life that we don't really wish to see. Well, Brene Brown's book follows right along with that. I've looked at her and studied her for a while. Several Unity churches have done this book, the Gifts of Imperfection. If you look at her range of books, she will point you to this one to start first, even though I've referred to and talked several times, Atlas of the Heart is her latest one, and it's a fantastic book, but it's a little hard to get into, at least it was even for me, so she said start with this one, so I went back to this one, and this is her rewrite of this. She wrote this book 10 years ago, and so this is the 10th anniversary of republishing it. This book here, we've got a few copies in the back. You're welcome to purchase if you want to go. It's not necessary. If you don't want to purchase this book, you can go to her website and find just a wealth of information about this book and any of the others she's done. It's amazing. The videos and oh, matter of fact, I don't know if you noticed, but in the MailChimp the last few weeks, I've put go watch her TED Talk. Have you seen that TED Talk?
Yes.
Have you watched it? Over 60 million views. It's number 2, the latest, and it's called The Power of Vulnerability. It basically put her on the map, if you will. So she is, Brene Brown is now, she's a celebrity, she's an author. First and foremost, she's a traveler like we are. And if you watch her videos, any of them, you'll see that. So we know our journey is to relax and release these blockages. And Brene Brown reminds us of exactly the same thing as what Michael Singer was telling us. So again, she's a social scientist, a researcher, and I say that her studies, she studies what makes us tick. So her research into shame and guilt and fear and vulnerability is what led me to look at her, because I've went through a lot of work about that back in the 80s and early 90s. That was a big deal. But she explains her personal life, how she has experienced shame and guilt in her personal life in a very unique way, funny way. She's very funny. So I hope you'll take a look at those and you'll see what she calls wholehearted living. So what is wholehearted living? So first, I want to ask you a question. Where do shame, fear, and vulnerability reside? Matter of fact, that's her research. That's what her research focused on. She said she didn't choose that. That research chose her, is what she says. And I can understand that. So, where do those particular attributes or aspects of us reside? Do you know? Mind. The other piece of that is, I'll get to, those things that we've hidden that we don't want others to see. She doesn't really say that in this particular, the first part of the book. She talks about it later. It resides in the psychologist tells us, psychiatry tells us, it's the shadow. Is the shadow. It resides in our shadow. That part of our psyche that we may not want others to see. Now, the shadow has a bad connotation. It comes off as negative. If you read this book right here, and I look at all this, matter of fact, I bought this book right here. It's Meeting the Shadow, and it's The Shadow by numerous authors. I bought that at Unity Village several years ago when I was up there. It's pretty dark. It's a dark delving into the human psyche and why we hide what we hide. We don't want it to be revealed what's in us. And yet, author after author after author says if we do the work, like we know, put light on it. You just shine light on the dark. It's not bad. It's just something that we don't bring up enough to see. Yes, the same thing as the Q effect. So while it has a connotation, the shadow side has a connotation of being just negative. I've got another book called Your Golden Shadow, and it turns it around, because there's aspects of our character and our nature that we suppress for various reasons, like creativity or a lifelong desire. Maybe it's something on your bucket list. We push it down for whatever reason, a trauma in our childhood or even in our adulthood, some abuse, physical or emotional or sexual, any kind of abuse can push those things down and put them in our shadow side. Our shadow side is an unconscious force within us, a source of power and possibilities that we can bring into consciousness and use creatively for a fuller and more enriching life experience. So, where's my clicker here? So you may have seen this, if you've studied any of this at all, you may have seen this, that's Renee, did I turn it off? I don't think so. There it is. So the best metaphor that I've seen that in the study I've done on shame and guilt, and there are two. If you watch the video by Brene Brown, she goes into there is a big difference between shame and guilt. You know what that is? Guilt is you're guilty for an action, something you do. Shame is you're unworthy. You feel like you don't belong because that's who you are. Shame is a beingness, and guilt is something you do or something you've done. But what the iceberg shows us the metaphor of this is that the conscious mind is above water, but scientists tell us that 90% on an iceberg, 90% of the iceberg is below water. So what's in our subconscious, and he calls it, I think this came from Carl Jung, subconscious and preconscious mind, and then our unconscious mind is what we conceal. Sometimes it's concealed and we don't even know about it. It's not a conscious concealment. But yet those things that are inside of us, like anxiety and stress and emotions like that, when it comes to the surface into our conscious mind, it comes out as other feelings, maybe, like anger. So that's what happens to, at least that's the model for this. Now, you may disagree with this, but it's in the good book, The Golden Shadow. This is a very positive book about the shadow. It's still the shadow, and there's still work to be done. And you might, there's some, you may not want to look at it, but if you're in that journey, that's a good one to pick. He says in this book, William Miller is the author of that, all human beings are capable of both great good and great evil. Our shadow is likewise a source of both. The unusual treatment of the shadow is to perceive it, that's what we usually do, perceive it as dark, sinister, a counterpoint or a counterpart to the bright persona we present to the world. Our shadow is certainly all that. It possesses the potential for enactment of great evil, but the shadow is much more than that. It is the potential resource for the enactment of great good. Great good comes from the shadow, like I said, creativity and some other things. So in unity, we have the journey of discovering our true self. And that's what Michael Singer talks about in Untethered Soul, the Christ within us. That's for sure been my journey. It's a journey of healing the shame that I felt, grew up with for whatever reason. It wasn't it was nobody to blame. It's just the journey that I was on. You remember, I'll tell you that in a minute, but we based this on what we're to do in unity on finding our self with a capital S, and we do that by expressing the Christ consciousness within. So we base this on Jesus' teachings that Eric Butterworth in his book, Discover the Power Within You, he says that theologians and preachers and other ministers we've done that for 2 millennia now, have gone amiss. They preach about the divinity of Jesus, and Jesus' message clearly taught the divinity of man, the divinity of us. Sometimes in the morning I'll say, I am fully human and I am fully divine. That's the teachings of Jesus. Jesus said, he that believeth on me, the works that I do shall he do also, and greater works than these shall he do. That's from John 14, verse 12. And again, Eric Butterworth reminds all of us, the teachings of Jesus is about the divinity of man. So in her research, Brene Brown evaluated her home life. She was not living a wholehearted life. Why? She says it was too much head and not enough heart. Too much head and not enough heart. Who's been guilty of that? So she realized that she had to do something about it for herself. So if you've watched her video, again, I'm going to keep telling you that because it is worth watching. Over 60 million people have watched it, so it's worth watching. You have good understanding of the impact on what this book, The Gift of Imperfection. So she created, from all this research that she did on shame and vulnerability and fear, she created a to-do column, or a do, that wholehearted, worthy people that felt worthy had on their list these attributes. She called it a do column. Included words like worthiness, rest, play, trust, faith, intuition, hope, authenticity, love, belonging, joy, gratitude, and creativity. And then on the don't column, the people that she had interviewed with her research, there was on this is what was on the column: perfection, numbing, certainty. It's my way or no way, right? exhaustion, yep, self-sufficiency, being cool, fitting in, judgment, and scarcity. So she said, she'll say it she said the S word. Oh, no. She realized that she was living her life from all that was on her list was on the don't column. Don't mean that's the people who were living wholeheartedly and had a sense of worthiness. She had all those attributes. And she said, how can this be? We all ask that. How can we live that way? How can that be happening to me? You're a good person and, do right and try to do right. Your mama told you to go to church every Sunday. At least my mama did. Mamas aren't doing that as much anymore, But that's what happened in our generation. So in 2006, after 10 years of research, I call it hitting the wall. She hit the wall, which if you know anybody or recovering addict, that's what happens to addicts and alcoholics. We hit a wall. So after 10 years of research on shame, fear, and vulnerability, she found a good therapist to begin her own healing work. She took a year and a half off. The data she gleaned from these stories and interviews made it clear she had work to do. So she is so funny in the way she says this. She said she showed up at the first session with her therapist. And by the way, she's a therapist, social worker, have to have a very, very good therapist who has a real high BS, can call BS real quick because she's a therapist. She knows. The same thing for other professions, doctors and dentists, professionals, and clergy. You have to have somebody that can call BS on your BS. So she shows up and she said, I need more things on this to-do list, like, again, worthiness, rest, play, trust. I need more of that. So she had a spreadsheet that she had printed out, and she just wanted to check them off the list. No childhood crap or anything like that. And that's what I was going to tell you. The John Bradshaw back in the 80s and 90s, the 90s and 2000, was the work that I did pretty extensively on the inner child, healing the inner child. And it was about shame. That's what it was from your childhood. So that's what she mentioned. She didn't say that, but at least that's the way I took it. She didn't mention shadow work, although she talks about it later in the book. So on her talk that you're going to watch, she said she had a breakdown. She called it a breakdown. As a matter of fact, the subsequent talk, she says, oh my God, what was I thinking? To tell everybody I had a breakdown, I had to take a year and a half off. She thought she had a panic attack just from that. But she was being honest and vulnerable, which is what we have to do to recover from these kinds of things. She said she read 40 books in the year plus that she was on break with her therapist because she had to believe in what she had found. This idea of why wholehearted people, and she came up with that name just by looking at this list of and how people reacted. And she says now you have to own your story. She sees owning our story and loving ourselves through the process is the bravest thing we will ever do. Courage, compassion, and connection only work when they are excused or exercised, not excused, exercised every day. So she came up with this list, and that's what the book is all about. She calls them guideposts for wholehearted living. So we let go of the things on the left, and we cultivate things on the right. That text on that slide is a little small. I couldn't make it any bigger. So let go of what people think, and cultivate authenticity. Let go of perfectionism. Melissa's going to talk about that one, and not this week, but next week. She's looking forward to that. And develop self-compassion. Numbing and powerlessness, and create a resilient spirit. Scarcity and fear of the dark, gratitude and joy, need for certainty, let go of need for certainty, and intuition and trusting in faith, and cultivate that. Comparison leads to creativity if we let that go. exhaustion is a status symbol, and productivity and self-worth. Big time guilty for that one. Work until I drop most of the time in my engineering career, and incorporate play and rest into our life. Anxiety is a lifestyle. Don't hold your hand up if that's you. Calm and stillness, self-doubt and supposed to, meaningful work, being cool, leads to laughter, song, and dance. And I'm thinking about that, what we're going to do for that last one. I may need your help, Bob. So we can change ourselves, and by changing ourselves, we can, and living wholeheartedly, we can do that, and encourage other people to do that too. So I had the thought of this, that a lot of us don't have the energy, or just choose not to. Whatever Michael Singer, says praises to all of us on this journey who are doing this work. If we're being here listening to this, and you're showing up to do the work, meditating, that's pretty special. I was reading this week, neurologists say now that meditation and mindfulness is the next big explosion, and it's going to result in a lot of changes. So we, all we see is all the negative changes. They referred this similar to like in the 50s. My parents didn't exercise. Maybe some did, but it was exercise and move, and every day. Usually for working on a farm, that was my aunts and uncles. I grew up with them. That's what we did there. But we didn't have a focused plan to exercise or to eat right. So doctors came in, and scientists came in and said, nutritionists said, if you do this will extend your life. And it's true. Now I feel guilty if I don't get out and walk in the mornings. So a lot of us, if we don't move and have some kind of movement, and that's one of the things on our list. Meditating and mindfulness are next. There's a small percentage of people who are doing it now in the U.S., and it will change. It's another thing. Look at how people are a lot more alive and alert and healthy because of that change, that paradigm shift. So meditation and mindfulness is going to do the same thing. So wholehearted living is about engaging in our lives from a place of worthiness. Almost exactly the same concept as what Michael Singer says about living untethered. A little different words, but it's the same thing. It means cultivating courage, compassion, and connection. I said during meditation, we can't be connected. We can't be connected unless we open our hearts. Michael Singer says, don't close. How do you keep your mind and your heart open? Don't let it close. Keep it open. Keep it open. And the way we do it is with love and acceptance about ourselves and others. So to wake up in the morning and think, no matter what gets done today and how much there is left to be done, I am enough. There's a book, I've done several talks about it, and I did when I was in Nashville. Self-esteem of Christed beings. We don't have the privilege, we don't have the right to put ourselves down. We are Christed beings. The same presence that lived in all the masters, including Jesus, lives in each one of us. Wholehearted living is a process. It's about bringing awareness and clarity to the choices that lead us to wholehearted living. Yeah, Brene's language is a little different. And by the way, if you listen to many of hers, she's pretty free with the four-letter words as well. So that may give you something to work on. But I see this as the living untethered, or finding the Christ within. It's the same concept with different words. That's why I wanted to do this, because it just feels like it's a continuation of living untethered. It's how we can do it. Michael Singer said toward the end of the book, do whatever you need to do to remove the blockages that are in you and do whatever you need to do to stay open. So if these are the things that are part of your blockages, do this work in whatever way you can. So going forward in this book, Brene discusses and cultivating and letting go, and in the 10 guideposts, and that's what we'll do. We'll look at those chapter by chapter. So she's not the first person to talk about these concepts of self-compassion, acceptance, and gratitude. But she says, she gives herself credit for this, that she may be the first to explain how these topics work individually and then together to cultivate wholehearted living. Her research qualifies her for that. We must understand how the tapes in our mind of shame and fear and guilt and feeling less than keep us afraid and small. So again, why are we afraid of our true selves? So we must grow to stand up to the never good enough tape that's in our heads. And who do you think you are? Now, and again, some of us, I've done a lot of work on this. I'm still doing work on it, but I've done a lot of work. So even if you don't have the work to do personally, or if it's a very minor amount of work to do for your own personal, knowing about this, particularly shame and fear, somebody will come into your life who you can help if you know about this, if you know her work and what it is, because every psychiatrist, and I know it seems negative in a way, says that we have that part of our shadow is shame and fear. It's deep down maybe for some of us. A lot of us have let go of that, and yet there may be something that's still there. There's things that come up from the unconscious that we don't even realize, and it comes out in the conscious mind, and it may come out sideways, as I call it. So I'm not going to read it, but she's got a great story in her book about the gun for hire, about a shaming experience she had while doing this work. It's a great experience, and she talks about it on the video as well, on the TED Talk. So how do we engage with people who are processing shame in their own life, the tapes of their shame story? Do we share it with other people? I'm afraid you guys get it from me. I'll tell you a little, most of it. So I think that's what I'm supposed to do. Somebody was sharing with me the other day that ministers aren't supposed to do that. Ministers in churches aren't supposed to, and I didn't ever see the minister in the churches I grew up in, you can never see that they had any flaws. Now guess what? Most of them crashed and burned. They hit the wall themselves really hard because of that. Terrible pressure of that we are perfectly imperfect. We are perfectly imperfect. We're fine just the way we are, good enough. So if you're sharing your shame with others, or you're listening to somebody's shame story, don't share it she suggests don't share it with the wrong person. And that's what I want you to get out of this as much as anything. We want to avoid the following. I feel sorry for you. I feel sorry for you. Sympathy versus empathy. Major difference and a major blockage. Sympathy is, we'll talk about that next week a little bit more. You quote, should feel shame. It's a judgment. My parents didn't mean to do it, but I got doses of that. You should feel ashamed of yourself, Ron. You've let me down. You've disappointed me. You should feel shame. This feels terrible. Who can I blame for this? So I want you to, Renee, can you start that? I want you to watch this little video, and then we'll close with this.
How many of you are blamers? How many of you, when something goes wrong, the first thing you want to know is whose fault it is? Hi, my name is Brene. I'm a blamer. Let me just tell you this quick story. So this is a couple years ago when I first realized the magnitude to which I blame. I'm in my house. I have on white slacks and a pink sweater set, and I'm drinking a cup of coffee in my kitchen. It's a full cup of coffee. I drop it on the tile floor. It goes into a million pieces, splashes up all over me. And a millisecond after it hit the floor, right out of my mouth is this: "Damn you, Steve." Who is my husband? Because let me tell you how fast this works for me. So Steve plays water polo with a group of friends. And the night before, he went to go play water polo. And I said, hey, make sure you come back at 10, because I can never fall asleep until you're home. And he got back at 10:30. And so I went to bed a little bit later than I thought. Ergo, my second cup of coffee that I probably would not be having had he come home when we discussed. Therefore, and so the rest of that story is I'm cleaning up the kitchen. Steve calls, caller ID. I'm like, hey. He's like, hey, what's going on, babe? What's going on? So I'll tell you exactly what's going on. I'm cleaning up the coffee that spilled all like dial tone. Because he knows. How many of you go to that place when something bad happens, the first thing you want to know is whose fault is it? I'd rather it be my fault than no one's fault. Because why? Why? Because it gives us some semblance of control. But here, if you enjoy blaming, this is where you should stick your fingers in your ear and do the na thing, because I'm getting ready to ruin it for you. Because here's what we know from the research. Blame is simply the discharging of discomfort and pain. It has an inverse relationship with accountability. Accountability, by definition, is a vulnerable process. It means me calling you and saying, hey, my feelings were really hurt about this, and talking. It's not blaming. Blaming is simply a way that we discharge anger. People who blame a lot seldom have the tenacity and grit to actually hold people accountable, because we expend all of our energy raging for 15 seconds and figuring out whose fault something is. And blaming is very corrosive in relationships, and it's one of the reasons we miss our opportunities for empathy. Because when something happens and we're hearing a story, we're not really listening. We're in the place where I was, making the connections as quickly as we can about whose fault something was.
Very good. So again, for me, these lessons are about inspiring and empowering personal transformation, your own or people that you come in contact with. There's three others there. Let's make this go away. So we don't share that with people. We don't say, let's make this go away. If you think that's bad, you do a comparison. You use your thing to say that's, and we don't upset people or make them uncomfortable. We speak truth to power. And here's the last one. I can fix this. And I can fix you. Not only can I fix that, your problem, I can fix all the problems. Advice giving and problem solving. So we are human, imperfect, and vulnerable. It's hard to practice compassion when we're struggling with our authenticity and when our own worthiness is off balance. So courage, she goes into how do we practice courage? How do we practice compassion? How do we practice connection? And she goes into the second part of the book. And again, this neuroscientist that says connection for us, connection to each other, is hardwired. That's what the neuroscientists are learning. And she says it's okay for us to be connected. Technology has become a kind of imposter for connection. We see that over and over and over. Technology, all the Zoom classes that we've done, it feels like we're connected. We're communicating, but we're not connecting. Not in the way we're hardwired to do. That's what we're finding out. We're connected when we really aren't, not at least in the ways we need to be. So people all around, so she says, people all around, open your heart, and stay connected, and we'll look at ways to practice passion and courage. So own your story, and loving ourselves through the process is the bravest thing we'll ever do. Namaste.
All right. Thank you, Ron. Very good. All right. We're going to, at this time, recognize and celebrate birthdays in September. So I've got 5 birthdays in mind. 4 of them are on this list that you might have. And so I've added Melissa Arendt has a birthday on September 7. And before that, it is Karen Pauline. Congratulations. Happy birthday. Your birthday's on the 6th, okay? And you already knew that, didn't you? I guess. All right. And Becky. Happy birthday to Becky. Becky's birthday is on the 15th. And then there's Rosalita Cisneros. Hope I pronounced that correct. Okay. All right. Rosalita's birthday is on the 19th, and she's not here today, but congratulations to Rosalita. Happy birthday. And Claudia Gammon. Happy birthday to Claudia. Her birthday is this month on the 27th. Okay. Thank you. Are there any others that anyone knows of birthdays in September? Okay. Well, if there are, happy birthday to all those too. So we're ready to sing our birthday song, Unity Style. Happy birthday to you, there's no one like you, uniquely created, I love knowing you. I bless you with life and abundance galore. God bless you, my loved one, and have many more. Yes. Very good. All right. All right. To finish our service today, let's make our circle. Let's try just going around, circling the tables. Since we have a fewer number of people, let's try to make the circle here. Okay. Sing our peace song and our prayer for protection.